Hello, and welcome to Stairway to English. This is the place where you practice listening and reading together. Relax, listen carefully, and follow the words on the screen. Step by step, your English will get better. Let's start.
Episode 1. The Birth of a Hero. Long ago, in the time of gods and kings, there was a land called Greece. The people of Greece believed in many powerful gods who lived on Mount Olympus. These gods often took part in the lives of men and women. Sometimes they helped them, and sometimes they brought them pain. In this world of heroes and gods, a child was born who would one day become the greatest warrior of all time. His name was Achilles. Achilles was the son of Peleus, a mortal king, and Thetis, a sea goddess. His mother loved him deeply and wanted to protect him from harm. She knew that the life of a hero was full of danger. She also knew that Achilles was destined to be great, but greatness often comes with a price. To protect her baby, Thetis decided to do something very special. When Achilles was still a baby, Thetis held him by his heel and dipped him into the river Styx, a magical river in the underworld. The water of the river had special power. It could make anyone who touched it strong and almost impossible to hurt. Achilles' whole body was touched by the water, except for the small part where his mother held him, his heel. That heel remained weak and unprotected. No one knew at that time how important this small detail would be in the story of Achilles. As Achilles grew, it was clear that he was not like other children. He was faster, stronger, and braver. People admired him. They said he was born to be a warrior. His father Peleus made sure he learned the skills of fighting, hunting, and leading men. But it was not only his father who taught him. A wise man named Chiron, who was half man and half horse, became Achilles' teacher. Chiron was not just a warrior, but also a healer and philosopher. From him, Achilles learned music, medicine, and wisdom. These lessons helped shape him into more than just a fighter. They made him a hero. Still, Achilles was young, and like many young people, he wanted adventure. He did not yet understand the heavy weight of destiny. But destiny was already waiting for him, for far away in a city called Troy, events were beginning that would one day pull Achilles into a war that would test his courage, his anger, and his heart. The story of Achilles is not only about battles and strength, it is also about choices, about pride, and about the price of glory. From the very beginning, his mother Thetis knew that Achilles' life would not be simple. She even tried to hide him from his fate. Some stories say that when Achilles grew into a young man, Thetis dressed him as a girl and hid him in the court of a foreign king, hoping that no one would discover him. But the gods and destiny cannot be tricked. The call of war would soon reach Achilles, no matter where he was. In this first part of Achilles' story, we see the beginning of a legend. A baby dipped into a magical river. A boy who became stronger than all others. A young man who was born to fight, but also carried a hidden weakness. These details shaped his future and gave birth to the idea of the Achilles heel, a phrase we still use today to mean a small weakness in someone who seems very strong. As the drums of war begin to sound in the distance, Achilles' story truly begins. He does not yet know it, but he will soon face choices that will make him remembered forever. Will he choose a long, quiet life without glory, or a short life filled with fame and honor? This is the question that lies at the heart of his legend. The story of Achilles is not just ancient history. It is a story about the human spirit, about courage, about anger, and about love. It is a story that has survived for thousands of years because people see themselves in it. We all have strengths and we all have weaknesses. We all make choices that shape our lives. Achilles' story reminds us that even the strongest hero is still human, and even a small weakness can change everything. This is only the beginning. In the next part of the story, we will see how the great war between the Greeks and the Trojans begins, and how Achilles takes his place as the most powerful warrior of his time. His courage will inspire many, but his pride will also lead to pain. Stay with the story, because the journey of Achilles has much to teach us all.
Episode 2: The Call to War. The story of Achilles continues with the beginning of one of the most famous wars in history, the Trojan War. This war was not only between kings and armies, it was also a battle shaped by the will of the gods. And it was the war that would make Achilles' name remembered forever. The war began because of a woman, the most beautiful woman in the world. Her name was Helen. Helen was the wife of King Menelaus of Sparta. But Paris, a prince of Troy, took Helen away and brought her to Troy. Some say he stole her. Others say she went with him because of love. But whatever the reason, this act became the spark that started a terrible conflict. When Menelaus learned that his wife was gone, he was filled with rage. He called on his brother, King Agamemnon, the most powerful king of Greece, to help him. Together, they decided to bring Helen back by force. They gathered many Greek kings and warriors to fight against Troy. Ships were built, weapons were prepared, and messengers were sent to call on the greatest heroes of Greece. Among those heroes was Achilles. But Achilles' mother Thetis had tried to keep him safe from war. She knew that if Achilles joined the fight, he would gain great glory, but his life would be short. If he stayed away from the war, he might live a long and peaceful life. Thetis wanted her son to live, not die young, so she tried to hide him. According to some stories, Thetis sent Achilles to live among the daughters of a king, disguised as a girl. She hoped that no one would find him there. But the Greek leaders knew they needed Achilles. Without him, their chances of winning against Troy were small. So clever men were sent to look for him. One of these men was Odysseus, a king known for his wisdom and clever tricks. Odysseus went to the court where Achilles was hiding. He brought gifts for the girls, fine clothes, jewelry, and ornaments. But he also placed a sword and a shield among them. When the gifts were shown, all the girls reached for the pretty dresses and jewels. But Achilles could not resist the sword. His warrior spirit was too strong to hide. He picked up the weapon, and in that moment, his disguise was broken. Now his fate was sealed. Achilles could no longer escape his destiny. He would go to war. He would fight at Troy. And his name would be remembered as the greatest warrior of the Greeks. Achilles joined the army with his close companion Patroclus, who was not only his friend, but like a brother to him. Together they sailed with the Greek forces toward Troy. 1,000 ships carried the Greek warriors across the sea. It was a sight of power and determination. Every man knew that this war would not be easy. Troy was a strong city, protected by great walls and brave soldiers. The Trojans were ready to defend their land with all their strength. On the way to Troy, the Greeks faced many challenges. At one point, the goddess Artemis, angry at King Agamemnon, sent strong winds to stop the ships from sailing. To please the goddess and continue their journey, Agamemnon made a terrible decision. He sacrificed his own daughter, Iphigenia. This dark act showed that the gods were deeply involved in the war and that victory would not come without great suffering. Finally, the Greek army reached the shores of Troy. They landed their ships and prepared for battle. The sound of war drums filled the air. Trumpets called the men to arms. The Trojan soldiers stood ready behind their walls. And in the middle of the Greek army stood Achilles, shining like a star. His armor was bright, his spirit fierce. He was ready to fight, ready to win glory, and ready to show the world that he was the greatest warrior alive. But Achilles' story was not only about fighting. It was also about his choices, his anger, and his pride. In the war to come, these parts of him would bring both greatness and tragedy. He would become a hero whose name never dies, but he would also face deep pain and loss. This was the beginning of the Trojan War. The ships had landed, the armies had gathered, and the greatest warriors of Greece and Troy would soon meet in battle. Among them, Achilles would shine brightest of all. His sword would bring fear, his shield would bring protection, and his name would carry the weight of destiny. The call to war had been answered, and now the world would see what Achilles was truly made of. Episode 3: The Rage of Achilles. The Greek army stood on the shores of Troy. Their ships were lined across the coast, and their warriors were ready for battle. For many days, the Greeks and the Trojans fought. The sound of swords, shields, and spears filled the air. The war was hard, and both sides suffered heavy losses. But among all the warriors, Achilles stood above the rest. He was fast, strong, and fearless. No Trojan could face him without fear. His name spread quickly through the battlefield. The Trojans knew that where Achilles fought, death was near. But Achilles was not only a warrior, he was also a man with pride. He believed in honor and respect, and when he felt dishonored, his heart burned with anger. This anger would change the course of the war. The Greek army was led by King Agamemnon, the brother of Menelaus. Agamemnon was a powerful man, but he was also proud and stubborn. He wanted respect from all the warriors, including Achilles. But Achilles did not like to be treated as if he were less than a king. He believed his strength made him equal, if not greater, than Agamemnon. One day, after many battles, Agamemnon angered the god Apollo. A plague spread through the Greek army, and many soldiers died. A prophet said the only way to end the plague was for Agamemnon to give back a woman he had taken as a prize of war. Furious, Agamemnon finally agreed, but his pride was hurt. To show his power, he decided to take a prize from another warrior. And so, Agamemnon took Briseis, the woman who had been given to Achilles. She was more than just a prize. To him, Achilles cared deeply for her. When Agamemnon took her away, Achilles felt humiliated and betrayed. His pride was wounded, and his heart filled with rage. In front of the Greek leaders, Achilles shouted at Agamemnon. His words were sharp, filled with anger. He called Agamemnon selfish and dishonorable. The two men almost fought with swords, but the goddess Athena stopped Achilles, whispering in his ear to control himself. Still, Achilles' fury was not cooled. In that moment, Achilles made a decision that would change everything. He refused to fight. He said he would no longer raise his sword for the Greeks. Without him, the army would be weaker, but Achilles did not care. His pride was greater than the needs of the war. He returned to his tent, took off his armor, and swore that he would never fight again until the Greeks truly understood how much they needed him. The Greeks begged him to return. They told him the Trojans were strong, and that without him, many would die. But Achilles would not listen. His rage was too deep. He asked his mother, the goddess Thetis, to go to Zeus, the king of the gods. He wanted Zeus to give victory to the Trojans, so the Greeks would suffer. Only then, Achilles thought, would they realize how much they had lost when he refused to fight. So Achilles stayed in his tent, watching as the war continued without him. The Trojans, led by their brave prince Hector, began to push the Greeks back. Without Achilles, the Greeks struggled. Hector was strong, wise, and beloved by his people. He was a hero equal to Achilles in courage, and he fought with all his heart to defend Troy. Day after day, the Greeks lost ground. Their warriors fell, their ships were threatened, and their leaders grew desperate. They sent gifts to Achilles. They offered him gold, treasures, and even the return of Briseis. But Achilles' pride was unshaken. He refused them all. He told them nothing could make him fight again. His heart was locked in anger. But inside him, Achilles was torn. He still loved his friend Patroclus, who begged him to return to battle. He still cared about the honor of the Greeks. But his pride was like a heavy chain, keeping him from forgiving Agamemnon. And so he stayed silent while the war moved closer and closer to disaster. The rage of Achilles had now become more powerful than his sword. It was not only the Trojans who were the enemy. It was his own pride, his own anger, and his refusal to forgive. These things, more than any spear or arrow, would shape his destiny. The war continued, and the Greeks grew weaker. Their cries for help reached the ears of the gods who watched from above, but Achilles remained in his tent, his mind dark with anger, waiting for the day when his pride and his fate would force him back into the fight.
Episode 4. The Death of Patroclus. The war between the Greeks and the Trojans grew darker each day. Without Achilles, the Greeks were weak. Their warriors fought bravely, but the strength of Hector and the Trojan army was too much. The Trojans pushed the Greeks back to their ships. The danger was great, and many feared the war would be lost. Inside his tent, Achilles sat in silence. He listened to the cries of battle, but his heart was still hard with anger. His friend Patroclus, however, could not watch the suffering any longer. Patroclus loved the Greeks. He also loved Achilles like a brother. Day after day, he begged Achilles to return to battle, but Achilles refused. One night, Patroclus came to Achilles with tears in his eyes. "My friend," he said, "the Trojans are burning our ships. Our people are dying. If you will not fight, then let me go in your place. Give me your armor. Let me lead the Myrmidons, your warriors, into battle. The Trojans will think I am you. Their hearts will fill with fear, and we may save the ships." Achilles looked at Patroclus with deep love. He did not want his friend to fight in such danger, but he could not deny him. Finally, Achilles agreed. He gave Patroclus his shining armor, his helmet, and his shield. He placed his own spear in Patroclus's hands and blessed him. But Achilles also gave him a warning. "Drive the Trojans away from our ships, but do not go too far. Do not chase them to the walls of Troy. If you do, you may meet your death." Patroclus promised to obey, but in his heart he burned with courage. He wanted to show his strength. He wanted to fight like Achilles. The next day, Patroclus entered the battlefield dressed in Achilles' armor. When the Trojans saw him, they were terrified. They thought Achilles had returned. Their courage broke and many ran. With the Myrmidons at his side, Patroclus fought with fire in his heart. He killed warrior after warrior, and the Greeks shouted with joy. The battle turned, and the Trojans were pushed back. Patroclus fought like a lion. He forgot Achilles' warning. His spirit grew proud, and he chased the Trojans all the way to the gates of Troy. The god Apollo saw this and became angry. He struck Patroclus from behind, making him weak and dizzy. In that moment, Hector, prince of Troy, saw his chance. He did not know it was Patroclus wearing the armor of Achilles. Hector thought he faced the great warrior himself. He threw his spear, and it struck Patroclus deep. The Greek hero fell to the ground. His armor shone in the dust, but his life began to fade. As he lay dying, Patroclus spoke to Hector. "You may kill me now, but remember this. It was not you alone who brought me down. Apollo struck me first. And know this, Achilles will return. He will come for you, Hector. My death will bring his rage, and your fate will soon follow." With those final words, Patroclus died. His spirit left his body, and the battlefield grew heavy with silence. Hector stood over him, proud of his victory. He took the armor of Achilles from Patroclus's body and wore it himself, believing it would make him even greater. The Trojans cheered, but the gods watched closely. They knew that Hector had just sealed his own fate. When the Greeks saw Patroclus fall, their hearts broke. They fought desperately to protect his body, for they knew Achilles would want to see his friend laid to rest with honor. The battle raged around Patroclus's fallen form. Blood covered the ground, and the cries of men and gods filled the sky. Far away, Achilles did not yet know. He waited in his tent, still holding on to his pride. But soon the truth would come to him. Soon he would learn that his closest friend, his brother-in-arms, was dead because he refused to fight. That moment would break Achilles' heart. His anger would no longer be only against Agamemnon or the Greeks. His rage would now turn against Hector and the Trojans. The death of Patroclus would awaken the warrior inside Achilles once more, and nothing would stop him from returning to the battlefield. The war had changed. The gods had set the path, and fate had spoken. The death of Patroclus was not the end, but the beginning of a storm. And in the heart of that storm stood Achilles, waiting for the fire of revenge to call him back to war. Episode 5. The Return of Achilles and His Fate. News of Patroclus's death reached Achilles at last. When he heard the words, his heart broke in two. He fell to the ground, crying with such pain that all could hear. His grief was deep, like the ocean. For Achilles, Patroclus was more than a friend. He was his other half, his brother of the soul. Now he was gone, and the blame burned like fire in Achilles' chest. He cried to his mother, the sea goddess Thetis. "Mother," he said, "Patroclus is dead because I refused to fight. Hector has taken his life and even wears my armor. My sorrow is endless, but my rage is greater. I will return to battle, though I know it will bring my own death. If I cannot live long, then let my name shine forever." Thetis heard his pain. She loved her son dearly, and knew his fate was already written. She went to the god Hephaestus, the maker of weapons, and asked him to forge new armor for Achilles. The god agreed and created a shield brighter than the sun, a helmet strong as stone, and armor that no spear could pierce. When Achilles put them on, the earth itself seemed to tremble. The next morning, Achilles stood before the Greek army. His eyes burned with fury, and his voice carried like thunder. "Today," he cried, "I return to battle. Today Hector will fall, and the Trojans will know the price of taking Patroclus from me."
The Greek warriors shouted with joy, for hope had returned to them. Achilles entered the battlefield like a storm. No man could stand against him. He cut down Trojan warriors one by one, moving with speed and fire. Even the river god Scamander tried to stop him, angry at the countless bodies filling its waters, but Achilles fought even the river itself. The gods looked down from Olympus, each choosing sides, but all knew Achilles was unstoppable. At last, Achilles found Hector standing outside the gates of Troy. The city walls were behind him, and the people of Troy watched from above. Hector's heart was heavy. He had killed Patroclus, and he knew Achilles would not forgive. Still he stood ready, proud and brave, for he was the protector of his people. When he saw Achilles charging, fear struck him. He ran around the walls of Troy, with Achilles chasing close behind. 3 times they circled the city, the sound of their steps echoing like thunder. Finally Hector stopped. He could not run any longer. He turned to face his enemy. "Achilles," Hector called, "let us fight with honor. If I fall, let my body be returned to my family, so they may bury me with respect. I ask this as one warrior to another." But Achilles, burning with rage, answered coldly, "Hector, you killed Patroclus. There will be no peace, no mercy. Today you die, and the dogs will feed on your body." The 2 heroes clashed. Spears flew, swords cut the air, and shields rang with the sound of iron. Hector fought bravely, but Achilles was like fire, too fast, too strong. At last Achilles drove his spear through Hector's heart. The Trojan prince fell, and the city of Troy cried out in despair. As Hector lay dying, he spoke his final words. "Achilles, I beg you again, do not dishonor me. Return my body to my father and mother. They will give me a proper funeral." But Achilles' heart hardened with anger. "No, Hector, my grief is greater than pity. You will pay for Patroclus." With that, Hector's spirit left his body. Achilles tied Hector's body to his chariot and dragged it around the walls of Troy, showing his rage to all. The Trojans wept, but none could stop him. Only later, when King Priam, Hector's father, came secretly to the Greek camp and knelt before Achilles, did the warrior's heart soften. Priam begged for his son's body, kissing the hands that had killed him. Achilles, moved by the sight of the old king's tears, finally agreed. He returned Hector's body, and for the first time Achilles felt some peace. Yet Achilles knew his fate was near. The gods had spoken long ago. He would live a short life, but a glorious one. Soon after Hector's death, the war would continue, and Achilles himself would fall to an arrow guided by the god Apollo, striking his only weakness, his heel. But Achilles did not fear, for he had lived with courage, fought with honor, and loved with all his heart. His name would never be forgotten. The story of Achilles, the greatest warrior of Greece, would live forever in the songs of men. And so the tale ends, not with endless victory, but with the truth of human life, that even the greatest heroes must face fate, but their deeds, their love, and their courage can shine brighter than death itself.